It's Rick Jones here, and I'm coming to you from the shores of Lake Erie. And it's Sunday. It's going to be Sunday soon. I want to get this video done before it gets too hot. These are the dog days of summer, and it's interesting. The dog days they're named after the rising of the dog star Sirius in the northern hemisphere, which coincides with the very hottest days of the year for us. And even in the early church liturgies, apparently we had what we celebrated as dog days in the English church from the beginning of July until the beginning of September. So here we are in the dog days, and we have an opportunity, I think, in the summertime, some of us anyways, to take some time to reflect and to relax a little bit, and certainly on a day like today not to do too much outside, but to think about some things in life. And one of the things that happened to me this week as I read the gospel readings and James, the letter from James, was that there's things in our lives that we kind of remember or we understand, and then we kind of go to the back burner, we forget about them, and then all of a sudden we re-remember them, we reflect on them again. And today I had that experience, or this week I had that experience with our readings. And what happened was that I came face to face with somebody in the Gospel of Mark and in James, somebody called the Jesus of history. The Jesus of history, as opposed to the Christ of faith. Okay, what's Rick talking about? Well, the Jesus of history is Jesus, the man who lived, who taught, who had a little band of followers. We know a bit about him from the gospel stories and from the sayings of Thomas, and you know, we don't actually have that much real hard historical data about him, but we catch glimpses of this Jesus of history in the stories that we have about him. And that brings us to this other character called the Christ of faith. And that's the Christ of faith is the Jesus that we actually see in the gospel stories. In other words, the gospel stories are stories about this man Jesus, interpreted by them and by their communities. So this is who Jesus means to me, especially in some gospels like the Gospel of John. It's all about what Jesus meant, who Jesus was for John and for the Johannine community. So this is what we mean by the Christ of faith. And let's face it, our churches, and my whole life, in fact, as a priest, as an Anglican priest, has been really devoted to the Christ of faith. All of the worship, all of the sacraments, all of the things that we do, and many of the things that we believe about Jesus, all have to do with things that we believe about Jesus, or the church believes about Jesus. But how many of those things actually really have to do with what and who Jesus really was? Now, we'd like to think a lot of it is the same, but really, if we sat down with Jesus today, had a coffee, and said, "Okay, Jesus, what are you really concerned about?" He probably would not say too much about the institutional church and about sacraments and about all of the things that the creeds, and about all these things that have become so important for the followers of Jesus over the centuries. And what's interesting about that for me is that today, I think we ran smack into something that Jesus was concerned about. So we have it in Mark's Gospel, we also have it in Matthew, and in the sayings of Thomas, number 14. What goes into a person's mouth does not defile a person, but what comes out of a person's mouth defiles a person. That's what Jesus said. And as close as scholars can figure, Jesus actually said that. This is a glimpse of the real historical Jesus, something that was important for him. Well, this in itself is pretty amazing because it paints a picture of somebody who just in that one saying completely destroyed all of the thinking of the religious people of his day. Because remember, what was the most important thing for the religious people in his day were to remain pure and upright in the face of God and the community. And you did that by observing the purity laws. And so, you know, there were certain ways that you had to wash, there were certain ways you had to cook food, and you certainly would never eat, as the disciples were apparently doing in this story, without washing your hands first. And then when he was criticized, instead of saying, oh yeah, we made a mistake, you're really important, Jesus doesn't do that. He says, wait a minute. He says, that's not important. What comes out of your mouth is more important than what goes into your mouth. No wonder people had a problem with Jesus. He was really a troublemaker. I mean, I can't think of anything that we could possibly imagine today that somebody could say that would be as disruptive, as radical as saying that. We live in a postmodern, pluralistic society. You know, everything is kind of relative, but not for those folks. For those folks, it was absolutely written in stone that the way you lived your life, the only way to be pure and to be upright and to be loved by God and to be in communion with your family and with the rest of the community was to observe these laws. And with one stroke, Jesus says, nope, that's not what the most important thing is. And then when you read James, and I read James, and it just struck me that, you know, James was so close to Jesus historically that the things that he talks about and the things that he thought were important probably actually reflect the things that Jesus thought were important as well. And that kind of came through, and I want to read you a couple of things from today's reading from James. And James writes, you must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Kind of sounds like Jesus, right? Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. And then he goes on to say, be doers of the word and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. And this is a big theme with James, that somehow to be a follower of Jesus means that we actually have to do something. It's not good enough just to believe some things. You know, say, oh yeah, I believe that Jesus was the Son of God. I believe this, I believe that. That's not actually what was important for the early Christians. What was really important for them was not just believing in Jesus, but actually doing the things that Jesus did and thought were important and taught. And so he goes on to say, religion that is pure and undefiled before God is this, to care for orphans and widows in their distress. So here you have, as I said, we've run smack dab this week into the historical Jesus and what's important for him. And what's important for him, it seems to me, is relationships and how we treat one another, how we speak to one another, and that we in fact care for one another, that we love one another, as he taught over and over again in so many different ways, that we care for one another. Imagine a world where the primary preoccupation of all religious people was actually to care for other people and not to keep the institutional church alive or to celebrate certain kind of rituals or to do all those things which we believe are important. But really, are they the most important thing? Were they the most important thing for Jesus? And I would have to say, if I want to be honest, I don't think so. What seems to have been important for Jesus was relationships, healing, justice, proclaiming that the kingdom of God is in our midst, that God has dreams and plans for humanity, and that we can live into those dreams and those plans. We have to do our part, and it means love and care and respect, all the things that were important to Jesus. So this week, as we are confronted with this radical Jesus, it seems to me that we live in a world where it's so easy to communicate, right? I mean, I just have to think of it, and I can text it, I can email it, I can respond to people way too quickly. I don't have to write a letter, I don't even have to pick up the phone. And in a world of instant communication, the words of Jesus seem to ring even truer. The words of James: listen. Listen before you speak. Watch what you say. Be slow to anger. Some businesses today have trained their employees that if you get an email that upsets you, you have to wait 24 hours before you can respond. Okay, so because if you just shoot back that email, you may say some things you regret. So, were Jesus' words as important? Are Jesus' words as important today as they were 2,000 years ago? Were the things that Jesus taught and cared about, are those things as important today as they were 2,000 years ago? If you think that they should be, then you'll be looking for the Jesus of history. If you want to pursue this a little bit further, I'm going to tell you about a book. It's called The Five Gospels. It's a new version of the Bible, relatively new version of the Bible, written by scholars whose primary preoccupation was to discover who the historical Jesus really was. I was kind of struck by the fact that no less a person than Thomas Jefferson took the Bible and he literally cut and pasted pieces out of the Bible based on what he thought, the historical Jesus might have said versus what the church kind of put in his mouth, or other people put in his mouth. And so this quest for the historical Jesus has been going on a long time. Even Albert Schweitzer wrote a book about it, The Quest for the Historical Jesus. And so this is not a new thing, but we've got really a great effort that has been done recently called, by this group of people called the Jesus Seminar, and they've published this book called The Scholar's Version of the Bible. And they've got all Jesus' words that they really think he actually said in red, following the old idea of the red letter version of the Bible. So if you're interested in this, I would commend it to you. It's going to shake you up a bit to realize how much we don't know about the historical Jesus. But what we do know, the glimpses that we do get of this amazing teacher, are life-changing. And so this week, as we reflect on, as I reflect on the Jesus of history and the Christ of faith, and realize that the Jesus of history calls me to really care about what comes out of my mouth, I invite you to have your own encounter with the Jesus of history. God bless you and have a great week.